All right, here we are with the Smokin Hot Tip of the week on the Bite Meat podcast. And what do you know? Let's just make this a tradition. Let's just make this a regular thing with DJ Mentzel from Texas Star Grill Shop at the Woodlands location. We're going to make you a star just yet, DJ. Actually, you're going to make yourself a star with some of your knowledge and the tips that you have. But this week is one that we've had some pit masters talk about it. Some love to use binders, some only on certain meats, and some never. And so when you're using a binder, let's go to you, like for our backyard cooks and such. First of all, do you use binders, and if so, when?
Yeah, I do sometimes. Like, typically binders are really beneficial when you're in a rush. Typically, if you have the time and the wherewithal, you don't need a binder. You just let the protein set out on the counter for about 30 minutes, or season it, let it sit for about 30 minutes, season it and let it set. It'll kind of sweat out and draw the moisture from the meat, and it will actually just bind naturally. And that's very good. It also going to help brine and improve the flavor. So it's typically my preferred method, but sometimes I'm in a rush, and so that's where you see like a lot of mustard on, like, let's say ribs, for instance, which I still do. It's just kind of an old habit. You don't taste the mustard, you don't taste it. You put it on there, it helps bind that seasoning to it, and so you can get straight to the cooking process. So it's a little bit beneficial when you're more in a time crunch.
Now you're just talking about something that we had on the podcast last week with Sunny Moody. She likes to let the meat sweat. Get the meat sweats going, and then you after it sweats, it kind of goes back in if you wait another 15-20 minutes or such. So you would recommend, if you have the time, let the meat and the seasonings work their magic, correct?
Yeah, 100%. Because what most rubs are going to have salt in it, and what you're doing is essentially dry brining. You're not only allowing it to bind naturally, but you're brining it, and we know from plenty of data and research and just experience that brining is going to significantly improve it. Now, even if it's just an hour that it's sitting in there, that's better than zero. Like, obviously brining overnight in a wet brine or even dry brine, if you get upwards of 24 hours, it's better. But even just like an hour, even 30 minutes, it's just going to help adhere naturally and just allow extra penetration, allow some of that salt. Pretty much what happens is it's drawing the moisture out from the meat. It's turning into like salt water per se, and then it's being reinserted into the meat, so you get more penetration and flavor
into the meat. Now, let's say we are talking binders. You've been around, you've competed, you've seen some pit masters all over how they do things. Mustard seems to be the common thread, but what else have you seen, and why mustard?
I don't know where mustard began. It just did, and so
it's copycat.
It's been mustard for a while. I've seen Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce is really good on brisket as well. I've seen olive oil. I've seen grape jelly. I've seen some pit masters do grape jelly. Yeah, they actually say I had a big conversation about it with this guy, and he said that it helped give off a better smoke ring. Competition stuff. I don't know if it's any true, but you can see a lot of things. Pretty much all you're doing is adding a layer of moisture so that the seasoning will stick to the meat. It's really all a binder does. You typically never taste anything from the binder at all. So
how do you keep let's talk about the seasonings now. Not if it's not a binder, and you talked about sort of the meat sweating and such. But when you're talking, chicken especially, but chicken and maybe some other meats, duck and such, how do you get those seasonings to stick and to penetrate and to work?
Same thing. I pretty much anytime I cook a protein, if I'm going to cook dinner, let's say, and I'm doing barbecue chicken, before I fire up the grill, before I do anything, I pull out the chicken, I season it, I let it sit on the counter. Then I go fire up the grill. Now it's had time to sit for 30 minutes. That seasoning's already adhered. It's already penetrated. It's done its thing. So now when I go put it on the grill and flip it over, seasoning's not getting dumped off or anything like that. It's already naturally binded. So that's typically step one of my process when it comes to whatever protein source I'm cooking, is season it.
Now, do you put your seasonings when you're, letting the meat sit more generously than you would if you're, say, using a binder? Because I do, and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but you tell me.
I'm pretty heavy-handed with seasoning. I like a lot of seasoning. I think most people don't use enough salt in their food. I don't do any different whether I'm binding or not.
Okay.
The only time I'm using a binder, honestly, is when I'm in a more of a rush.
Yeah. A couple more things here before we move on. Like you're saying, as I'm listening to you, I want to just make sure it's right. You pretty much do this on every protein. Doesn't matter,
Every
ribs,
protein.
chicken, brisket, duck.
If I'm cooking salmon in the house, if I'm cooking fish, shrimp, it doesn't matter. I'm seasoning my protein first thing. It's just a way to get added flavor and a more juicier piece of protein.
All right, that's good. Let me ask you one more thing, and we'll let you go in this edition of the Bite Meat podcast. What are some of the big mistakes that you've seen people make? Because a lot of times, our listeners are like, "Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that." After I heard whether it's you or another pitmaster or someone like that, what are some of the big mistakes when seasoning a protein? Because a lot of times the seasoning outside of binding or whatever is maybe just wrong for that meat. You know what I mean?
I'd say people under season brisket a ton. I think people get too nervous about over salting a brisket, and you just can't. When you have a big piece of meat, and it could be pork butt as well, but when you get a big chunk of meat, you really can't over season it because you're trying to build a bark and such like that. But you just, so many people, and they're health conscious as well, right? Trying to keep their sodium level down, but you literally can't put too much seasoning on the outside of a big chunk of meat because it's only going to apply to the very outside. You're still, once you get it like pulled pork, once you chop it all in, it's all mixed in.
Yeah.
I typically always add seasoning once I pull it as well because there's just so much meat that's not getting any seasoning. So especially I would say the biggest
pork, right?
Yeah, especially on pork. Even brisket's pretty good because you got a lot of fat and intermuscular fat and stuff, and then you get such a delicious bark.
Yeah.
But I would say the biggest mistake I've seen is people not using enough seasoning on a big protein.
Good stuff. That is DJ Mentzel, and we're going to hit you back next week. We're going to talk about fajitas or fajitas, depending on your background, because that's one that's going to be fun to do and easy to mess up. Trust me on that. I know. You guys, appreciate you listening to this podcast. Thank you very much to Wes Wright from Cookout News for joining us this week. Of course, thanks to DJ, and especially thanks for you guys listening. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is. Until then, we'll talk to you next week. Smoke it up, and we will see you then. All right. So let's do fajitas.
Fajitas.
Let's do fajitas. I've screwed up.
I made fajitas for dinner last night. So
you did?
Yeah, I made fajitas last night, and I had it for leftovers for lunch. So.
Oh, that's a good lunch.
Yeah.
All right, let's knock this out for you. All right, it is time for the ever popular Smokin Hot Tip of the Week, brought to you by Texas Star Grill Shop. And we're going to be out at Texas Star Grill Shop with DJ Mentzel. This is the one in the Woodlands. He's selling that OG sauce too, baby. He's getting that done for sure. But all your grill needs out there, go see DJ and everyone at the Woodlands Texas Star Grill Shop location. All right, DJ, here's one that, a lot of times you get embarrassed. You hate to admit it, but you got to admit it for the sake of the listeners, for the sake of the people that are listening to this podcast. It's, to me, I would rather almost cook a competition brisket than fajitas for my family on the fly, because it seems to be like so easy to just overdo, underdo, too tough, too easy. You got to get this wheelhouse. You got to hit it right in the sweet spot for fajitas. And the easy out is just make chicken fajitas. But let's talk about real. Let's talk about real meat here. Let's talk about beef fajitas. How do you get that consistency for your fajitas? What do you do?
I would say first things first is like a good high quality cut of fajitas. The only fajitas when it comes to beef I make anymore is going to be outside skirt. I am lucky enough that I work here at Texas Star Grill Shop. We sell akaushi, which is a Wagyu outside skirt, and it's just night and day difference between any other flank steak or inside skirt that you're going to get. It's going to have a lot more intermuscular marbling. It's going to be a lot more flavor. So it's a little bit more forgiving. Even when you maybe overcook it a little bit, it'll still be tender and juicy. But typically, the best way to do it is just hot and fast right over a coal, and then always use an instant read thermometer to get the direct doneness on that.
And that doneness is?
It can vary, but typically most people like fajitas at medium, which would be around like 135, 140. I'm a 135 guy. I like it a little bit more medium, more rare red side. Yeah. My wife, not so much. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, who was over last night for fajitas, she likes hers well done, which, you just cook those a little bit longer. Yeah. But the key to a good fajita really is slicing against the grain.
Oh, Lord, yes.
By far and away, even if you've got inside skirt or you have flank steak, you can really improve the tenderness by cutting it on against the grain and on a bias if you can. And on a bias is pretty much, instead of cutting straight down at a 90-degree angle, cut down at a 45-degree angle. And that kind of enlarges the grain that you're cutting against.
Like almost at a,
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to improve because it's a longer cut. So it definitely improves tenderness that way as well.
And you guys have Heartbrand there.
We do, yeah. Heartbrand, which is just
that's the gold standard.
Phenomenal. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
All right. So how long do you season them? Do you put them in a gallon bag with whatever? What are you looking at?
I don't do any wet marinating anymore. You definitely can. And there's different flavor profiles. You can go there. Very similar to what we spoke on last week, where I season the protein early and let it sit and pretty much brine. If I can do it overnight, fantastic. And I'll just use whatever local fajita rub that I'm using. You can make your own, whatever. You just season the protein. You let it sit overnight. That's going to be a dry brine. It's going to marinate it. What I find is that actually dries out the skin a little bit more. It inhibits a better crust when you're searing it. And so, that Maillard
black char, boy, that exactly. Got me hungry. Now you got me hungry. What kind of wet seasonings have you? Because I've seen everything in the book that people have tried.
There's a lot, and when it comes to wet marinating, you can kind of transition into a couple different flavors. You have like mojo style, which is really popular in like Florida per se, the like Cuban industries, which is going to be a lot of citrus and stuff like that. You can get more like smoky notes, and there's a bunch of different ones that you can get. It's been a long time since I've done it. The last time I did a wet marinade, I literally just used a rub and added water.
That'll work. That'll work. Yeah. But it is fascinating. Like fajitas gives me more anxiety. Everybody has anxiety when they're cooking for their family and everything. But it's just, you want them perfect, and you just know exactly what a good fajita looks like. You can't lie, and the flavor is there. But you can just consistently get better with cut of meat, dry brine, maybe even overnight, and then get that temperature right. It's really not as complicated as a lot of us try to make it out to be, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing with wet marinade too. If you just marinate it overnight, same thing. You're imparting a lot of moisture into that inside the meat, just because it's drawing in a lot of the salt and such.
And I do want to let you go here because I know we like to keep you longer than we probably should. But what have you guys got going on at Texas Star Grill Shop up in the Woodlands? It's a relatively new store still. I want to make sure people get out there and ask you questions. You have the knowledge, obviously. And now that we're through the holidays, I know a lot of people getting into tailgating season.
Yeah, football coming around the corner, so another big part of the year for us. We just get past Labor Day. Labor Day is a big holiday for us. Ironically, if we started this segment talking about the OG sauce, and I kid you not, a customer came in here and bought every single bottle we had. It was like 20. It was like 20 bottles. Well, the problem is that next day I had two or three more customers coming in to look for the OG sauce, and they didn't have none back yet. So got more now. Yeah, so definitely come get that. But yeah, we're always running specials and stuff, and always trying to keep different things to get you coming in and out the door, different things like on your fuel and stuff. Get ready for the tailgating season.
Well, I know
Especially
you're knocking it out of the park, and I'm glad I don't have to send Rick Martin a nasty note about getting some OG
Sure.
sauce out there. Appreciate it. You guys, thank you for joining us. And of course, thank you for joining us, DJ, and everybody, brought to you every week by Texas Star Grill Shop. We will talk to you next week. Until then, don't forget to subscribe and smoke it up. We will see you then. All right, man.